And next up, we have a keynote on economic diversification in the Middle East. And for those of you who live here and who have lived here for a while, you have seen that so much has happened here with regards to the economic, reducing the economic dependence on hydrocarbons. And in 2017, the contribution of oil and gas to GDP was just under 30%, which is quite remarkable when you think of what it was just 10 years ago. So I would like to welcome a keynote interview to the stage. I'm very happy that we have Chavan Bhogaita. He's the Managing Director and Head of Markets Insights and Strategy from FAB, and he will be giving a keynote interview with Talal Al Dhiyebi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Aldar Properties. So please join me in welcoming Chavan and Talal to the stage.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we've been asked to talk about economic diversification in the Middle East, and Talal has agreed very kindly to provide his insights on this. Clearly, as you all know, this is a vast subject, so we could speak about this all day, but we have all of 15 minutes. So we're going to take you on a journey which is going to be more like speed dating through the subject of economic diversification, and hopefully cover as many angles as possible on this subject. So I think the first thing to say is, for the Middle East region, economic diversification is a must-have. It's not a nice-to-have. We almost have to hold our hands up and say, the Middle Eastern economies, have been way too reliant on hydrocarbon revenues thus far and need to diversify to much more sustainable revenue streams going forward. So, Talal, first question to you would be, playing devil's advocate, many skeptics out there say, we've heard this economic diversification stuff many times before. Is it for real this time? Are they serious this time?
Thank you. And first of all, I'm honored to be speaking at this great event with so many renowned speakers. It is a must. It is a strategy that the leadership have taken very seriously from day one, with the establishment of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority very early on to diversify away from the oil revenues. A few years ago, the leadership came out and put out a commitment that we were going to celebrate the last drop of oil, but do that in a controlled and a sustained way by investing in the right sectors where we see opportunity, but where we also see areas of growth to stimulate the economy, attract new jobs. And there's been many success stories moving from, education to healthcare to nuclear to renewable energies. So it is a must. It is real, and it is happening in Abu Dhabi.
And aside from all the specific initiatives and infrastructure and so on and so forth, but the diversification, one could argue, is as much of a mindset. You've got to have that mindset and say, we need to diversify. Are we there yet?
That mindset starts and emanates from the leadership. So that exists. And then there's a role that the major sovereign players, each of them play. We heard from the Deputy Group CEO at Mubadala earlier, and the role that they've played, a big chunk of their investments obviously being locally here in the UAE in various sectors. But more importantly, the changes that we've seen in the government more recently are the government is moving away from becoming a regulator to becoming an enabler. Yeah. And in particular, enabling the private sector on one side, which we've seen. We've benefited from that this year. As part of the fiscal stimulus, we were awarded 5 billion dirhams worth of packages across infrastructure, a media entertainment zone, and national housing through a public-private partnership model. But also in terms of attracting SMEs. And that's a big area of growth in key sectors, one of them being technology, things like Hub 71. An example more recently as well, earlier this year, the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, attracting SenseTime, coming in, attracting 700 people, data scientists, people that wouldn't have had a reason to come to Abu Dhabi previously, but more importantly as well, creating 2 to 3,000 direct and indirect jobs as they establish themselves in the region.
You're feeling the impact of that, and, or do we need more time in order to see the effects actually ripple through?
We're seeing that today. Now, the full, reaping the full benefits of that is obviously going to take some time, but that spend is happening today, and there's the fiscal stimulus on one side, and there's the government regulation happening on the other side. So attracting new companies by the increased foreign ownership in the companies law, having the long-term investors, creating all of these incubators like Hub 71 and others. And then at the same time, the fiscal stimulus and investing in each of these key sectors. Those two things coupled together, the mindset that you mentioned, it's a role that everyone can play. It's something that we're seeing, and it's the reason that we remain optimistic of the opportunities that we see as an organization, and will continue to reap the benefits. And it's also the opportunity for many other companies to come establish themselves in the region, start to invest. So we heard from the chairman of Abu Dhabi Global Markets this morning, talking about the companies that have, over the last few years, come understand the region, but then they also needed a platform, including regulations and different certification and judicial bodies, to give them that extra level of comfort to come and really take this region even more seriously. And even at a time where many people would call it, a softer cycle of the economy, still able to attract some key names that have now established themselves on the ground in Abu Dhabi Global Markets.
Agreed. So you're CEO of Aldar Properties. What role does a real estate firm have to play in this diversification story?
So,
without doing a hard sell.
It puzzles me why I'm on the stage, because real estate, we don't see real estate as an economic pillar, and I think that's been the vision of the leadership. We see ourselves as an enabler to this economic diversification. The investment that's happening in each of these sectors, I mean, whether it's in oil and gas, the renewables, education, and healthcare, those will create jobs. Those will then attract an increase in the population, where you'll have families that then need to be serviced. It's important for us to align ourselves with that strategy to understand where that growth in population will come, what segment of the market, what's the type of people that will come, what are the housing needs that they will require. Today you have a very different, sophisticated, well-informed client that knows what he wants. And one of our areas of focus is to really try and pin that down, understand that, and then deliver solutions, be it on the residential side or on the ancillary services. Retail, hospitality, education is a big part that we also invest in.
Now, clearly, it could be argued that the UAE is ahead of the curve compared to other regional players in terms of diversification. Clearly, Saudi Arabia is now kind of catching up. They're doing a lot of good work. You were at the recent FII event. On the ground, can you feel the change? Can you feel any conscious effort to diversify, to reform, to change the status quo?
So, Saudi Arabia is going through an extremely exciting time. A time that nobody around the world can ignore. This year, despite the critics around the world, they did an extremely successful transaction by raising over $25 billion at Saudi Aramco, and I think that's just the start of what's happening. But what I saw on the ground in terms of the social and the cultural shift, the willingness to do business, the willingness to attract investment. I was amazed by that last month at the FII. Last week we saw Saudi. If you asked me a year ago, would Saudi open its doors and offer citizenship to investors or specialists in key sectors? I would have said, yeah, but maybe in a very, very long time if I wanted to be optimistic. Last week we saw that happen. So and the success and the economic diversification and the growth in this, great and big economy in Saudi Arabia is only good for not only the region, but for the entire world. So yes, that is going to happen. It's happening on the ground. They're taking all of the right steps. We're going to see more monetization of assets. We're going to see more public-private sector engagements over there. And as much as everyone else in the region needs to wake up to that, I think there's going to be a wider benefit for everyone.
Agreed. Now, I think often there are skeptics out there who say, the diversification play, yes, we've heard that before, and so on and so forth. But wouldn't it be right to say that this time around, we, the region, don't have a choice? It has to happen. And that's true of Saudi Arabia, that's true of the UAE. Wherever you look across the region, the time has come for this diversification thing to actually happen. Would you agree with that? Or
Yes, but that's coming from a point of strength.
Yeah.
It's coming from the wisdom of the leadership to say, where do we want to be in 100 years? And you have these plans of taking people out and putting them out into space that are real when the leadership come and announce something such as that.
So it's through a vision, and then it's not through having your back against the wall.
100%. And I mean, today, the oil and gas sector, and what we've seen under the new ADNOC leadership over the last few years has transformed this company. Today, it's one of the most important oil and gas players in the world. Their ability at this time in the market to attract all of the investment, be it on their pipelines or be it on their service business, ADNOC Distribution, very successful transactions. They continue to be at the forefront of a very, very disruptive time in the market, and that's going to continue to be a very strong and core and fundamental part of the economy. But that then fits part of the strategy to say, let's continue to invest in other sectors and make sure that we are ready when the oil finally finishes, but we're still quite a way from that.
Agreed. Now look, clearly the diversification play has to be aligned with the vision, as you say, and has to be sustainable. If we're looking longer term, what would you see as some of the key challenges to the diversification play?
Look, there's many things. When you're starting to invest, and we heard at one of the earlier sessions, in brand new areas. Today, when you start to look at technology, when you start to look at artificial intelligence, one thing is trying to upskill and find the right talent that can work in those specific sectors, but then find people that can then connect the dots between those sectors and enable them to come in and revolutionize healthcare or sneakers, as we heard earlier, or education. So that talent pool and attracting the talent pool in such a competitive global environment is a struggle. Having the supply chain in some of those industries, a qualified, agile supply chain. If I take the real estate sector today and you look at Carillion, what happened to them a few years ago, again, we have troubled players here in the region as well. It's a struggle where some of these companies in the supply chain, and that's just in real estate, but it applies in many other sectors, are not able to respond to these disruptive times. So that's another major risk that we see in terms of just making sure that we have enough players to be able to sustain this economic diversification.
Okay. And for any investors in the room, how would you envisage them being able to take advantage of this diversification across the region? What opportunities could the diversification bring for them?
One, there's opportunities on the ground. So being on the ground today, you'll witness those opportunities live. You'll witness a willingness from key partners in government or the private sector to come in and do business and allow you to flourish and make lots of money. But at the same time, if you have that opportunity that you believe in as an idea and you don't have the right partner, bringing that idea, this region has the ability to take ideas and take them to becoming material and live in a very, very short period of time. So even if you just have an idea in a sector that we're not exposed to yet, bring it, have the right discussions. You'll see how open this place is and how responsive it is to great ideas that'll drive value both for those businesses and for the economy.
Okay. Look, I'm conscious that we're soon running out of time. One of the things that I'd like to point out to the audience here is each and every one of you has a role to play in the economic diversification of the region. And the way in which you can play this role is very simply, after this session, you go to the Aldar exhibition stand and you buy some villas there. Talal has very generously offered a discount for those of you that are there in the next 5 minutes. So please do participate. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause, please, for Talal.